Hello friends, welcome to my channel Sushant Chesswise. Today we are at the next topic, that is an outpost, and we are at the third example of our topic. So this is the position with white to play. You can see that the knight has an excellent location in the center, that is the square d5 which falls on the open file and also is supported by pawns. So d5 is the outpost where knight wants to settle. Immediately we note that the pawn c7 can attack the knight with c6. And it looks like the square d5 is not such a great place. But this is what white wants. When the knight will settle on d5, usually what happens, even when there is a pawn on d6, white wants that black plays c6 and the d6 pawn becomes weak. Here the square d6 will come into knight's control and white will use it for attacking the weak pawns. So white starts with the move knight d5. If black wants to play nf6 and dislodge the knight using the tactic that knight c7 is met by rook c8, when c4 is lost, then white can just take knight f6, gf6, go rook a d1, rook d8, and white can play the very useful king f1. The point is very simple. The white king is trying to come to e2, f3, g4, f5. And if the white king reaches f5, then all king and pawn attempts will be lost. And this position, although not totally winning, but white has great chances of converting it. We will consider one such endgame in future. We must also note that the move rook c8 instantly fails to any 7 check, forking the rook on c8. So black goes c6, knight e7 check, king h8, and the knight has identified another beautiful spot, that is the square d6. So comes knight f5. Black goes rook a d8, trying to stop nd6, rook a d1, g6, knight d6, and the first problem. If the pawn is moved, then knight f7 check, rook f7, rook d8 is lost. Rook d7 forced c5, fixing the knight's position firmly on the d6 square. Now we see that the squares d6, a5 and d6, these are under knight's control, and it is said that once we get a set of weak squares, especially here b6 and d6, the knight will maneuver around those squares and it uses those same squares again and again to exploit the weakness. King g8, knight c4, attacking e5. Now the threat is f3, knight moves and e5 would be taken. Rook f d8, trying to get control of the d5. Now white had seen the variation rook d7, rook d7. It's very important to see the consequences before surrendering the open file in such a way. Of course, white had seen the move f3 when he noticed that after knight f6, he can use the move king f2. When after re7, the only way to protect e5, white regains the control of the d5 and the rook will penetrate, giving a winning position to white. After rook d7 comes rook d6 and white wins at least one pawn. Rook d6, knight d6 and b7 is lost. Black goes knight h6. Now white has to decide whether he can take the pawn on e5 and allow the rook to enter the 7th rank. This requires precise calculation. So let's look at it in bit detail. Knight takes e5, rook d2, and now we cannot give up b2. So knight c4 forced, but then black has the move rook c2. When it looks like if the knight moves, then the pawn on b2 is lost and black might even become better. But white had seen the consequence of the move b3. Let's see. Knight takes c5, rook d2, knight c4, rook c2, b3. Good move, giving up the pawn on a2 and regaining control of the d5 with rook d1. Now we can see the property of the knight. When it's defending close quarters, it is able to control or defend the squares very nicely. Like a3 and b2 are controlled by knight, which the rook is trying to attack from, and also the square a5 from where it can attack c5 is controlled well by the knight. Now black is about to lose a pawn by force. The b7 pawn is coming under fire. So a5, rook d8 check, kg7, rook a8. Nothing can be done about the a pawn, so black decides to give it up. Nevertheless, a4, rook takes a4. Black hopes for the best in the knight endgame. Rook takes a4, b takes a4, knight d6. In the game, black played the move knight g8 try to get the knight, but after king f8, knight d6, k e7, knight takes b7, k d7, knight d6, king c7, k f2, f6, k e3. White has a very simple plan. The a pawn keeps the king tied on the queen side, and after k d4, f4, e5, the pawn on e5 prevails. Black goes ng8 instead of kf8 in the game. Still nothing much changes. Knight d6, king f6, knight takes b7, k e5, a5, knight e7. The knight is heading to the c8 square in order to control a7. But white stops that with the move knight d6, k d4, a6. Here black chose to resign, as there is no way to stop the a pawn from winning. This was a typical example of a knight exploiting the outpost. I hope you are finding these lessons useful and instructive. Thanks for your time.